Thank you. So good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock in Nelson, 10 o'clock in the real time zone, the Mountain Time Zone. We will get this meeting underway. Get my paperwork in order, I guess, first. So, want to acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. And I'm looking for an adoption of the agenda as circulated, which Director Chair Watson and Tierney, any changes, nothing else from staff? Open agenda today. All in favor? Any opposed? The agenda is carried as presented.
Privilege, please.
Go ahead, please, Director.
I just want to make sure that sound is working for everyone participating in the meeting. I don't know if you checked with anyone else.
We did a sound check. How was your sound?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I did do a sound check at 10 minutes to the hour, roughly. Okay. Receipt of minutes, October 15th minutes have gone to board. Haven't heard of any other concerns with those. They're received. Delegations. This morning we have no delegations from land applications. Planning and building, we have item 7.1, dangerous and aggressive dog control service establishment bylaw. So there's two bylaws, one for A, B, and C, and a separate one for area H. Tom Duell has provided us a report and recommendations how to get these service establishment bylaws underway, I guess. Tom, maybe if you want to give us a Cole's note of where we're at with these two bylaws, and then we'll have a discussion.
I could, Chair.
Oh, yes.
Just through Chair to Tom, if you could also talk about the timing of the regulatory bylaw, just how everything fits together.
Yeah,
I think that might
respectfully as well. The Chair, I believe we're taking recommendation for the third reading at this point.
Yeah.
And again, thank you, Stuart, for the reminder that this has to move in lockstep. So we have a service establishment bylaw for dangerous dogs. The names have been changed to specify this is about dangerous and aggressive dogs. It's about a specific component of the Government Act. It also is intended to enable the RCMP to assist us. In order for the RCMP to be able to assist us, we obviously need dog service and some of the sort of infrastructure involved in dealing with dangerous dogs. So there's the service establishment piece that is at second reading. We're seeking third reading. Simultaneously, we also have a regulatory bylaw. So the regulatory bylaw is important how we accomplish these things. These rules around dangerous and aggressive dogs. That is at second reading as well. So in order to move forward with the service, obviously, we need to specify what the service is going to do, what authorities we are granting with that service. So that's the regulatory component. So again, they need to move in lockstep. So if we're going to proceed with service establishment, we should also be ready to proceed with the regulatory plan.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Tom Vandenberg? Go ahead, please. Oh, sorry, Davidoff first. I see your hand up. And then Vandenberg. Go ahead, please, Director Davidoff.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I just had something else open on the screen. Yeah, a question to Tom through the chair. So those of us that have dog control bylaws, I mean, it was always implicit that if there was an aggressive or dangerous dog, that would be a priority for the enforcement officer to address. So do we have to amend our bylaws, for existing bylaws to have this language, or is what we have now sufficient for actions to be taken with respect to aggressive and dangerous dogs? Through the chair.
Respectfully through the chair, the aggressive and dangerous dog bylaw, service establishment, and the regulations associated with it are currently written specific to areas A, B, C, and H, where we're going to implement those services. The other dog control services across the regional district have a much broader scope. I think you could probably look at those more as dog control bylaws. They're not about just dangerous or aggressive dogs, so they contain that component. This has been a part of an effort to sort of narrow that scope a bit at the behest of the service participants. The intention is to narrow the scope a bit and sort of limit it to those really problematic dogs in communities, give the regional district the tools to deal with those dogs, and of course, facilitate participation in this by the RSQ. Does that answer your question?
Supplemental, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is all included in what we're doing now. I just want to make it crystal clear, and there's nothing we have to do for existing dog control bylaws to because I just want to make sure on behalf of my constituents where we do have this, that this is all included implicit in the bylaw, the existing bylaws, correct? Through the chair.
Back to the
CEO had a comment as well, but if you go ahead.
If I could just, through the chair, Director Davidoff, this doesn't change anything for I, J, K, E, or F. However, once this regulatory bylaw is established, there has been some discussion amongst those directors or from those directors who wish to narrow the scope of their dog control services and have it relate to dangerous dogs. We could then amend the bylaw down the road to bring those areas on. We didn't do that at this time because it would have lengthened the time it took to get these services established. So we're starting with A, B, C, and H. And if the other areas that have that broader scope wish to narrow it, we can amend the bylaws down the road, but it does not change your service level at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's very helpful. And we don't want to block the work that these other areas need and are focused on. We just want to make sure that we're not losing anything and that all this is included. And I think the explanations have been very good to answer my questions. Thanks, Chair.
And Sangeeta, I also see your hand up if you wanted to comment. Then we have, we want to check in with Director Popoff as well in a second here, but go ahead, Sangeeta.
Just to add to it, the only difference really from our current bylaws for dog control is that we won't be registering the aggressive dog and tracking that behavior, which is what is in the current dangerous dog bylaw. So the current bylaws that apply to I and J don't have a tracking mechanism for the aggressive dog. The dog control officer does that, but we would create a form that would track that dog over time to ensure that behaviors were being corrected, and we would track that behavior correction in the tracking format. That will be provided with the regulatory bylaw. And it's a decision of the board whether they choose to go in, the ones that have dog control, if they choose to go with this new bylaw. But your bylaw does address dangerous dogs and aggressive dogs.
Thank you.
Okay, your hand is still up, Director Davidoff, but you're good. Okay. I just want to check in on a connectivity issue, Director Popoff. Did you want to weigh in on this item right now? I have, before you have Director Vandenberg. And if you did, we can pause it until you solve your microphone problem. Are you able? You cannot connect for audio yet? Okay. Did you want to weigh in on this item, or can we continue while you're trying to fix your audio problem? Or perhaps you want to phone in?
Go ahead.
It's okay, we'll go ahead. Okay, using a little sign language here, I guess. Okay, we'll continue, but if you do need to speak, Director Popoff, we will pause the meeting until you're able to connect. That's our policy. So I have a thought about what I just heard, but Director Vandenberg, you're next on the speaking list.
Great, thank you. To the chair, a couple of questions. First one, procedural in nature. Just curious, what drives the separation of A, B, C, and H into two separate bylaws? Everything seems to be so similar. Why is there a need for two separate bylaws?
Tom, yep, go ahead.
Directly to the chair, it's the non-contiguous nature, and it's the opportunity to use two separate contractors. Really, just makes far more sense than having one contractor trying to service H and ABC could likely result in a drive up of costs, particularly if that contractor is, say, located in a centralized location like Salmo or Nelson, right? Or an hour and a half drive on the front end of everything. We contemplated doing one contiguous, like one whole service, but really at the end of the day, it seemed to make a lot of sense. As well, because we have each as a standalone resolution directing that work, we actually decided to proceed with that in case there was further debate in A, B, or C, where you're working working with service partners and trying to agree upon service levels, and then there's a portion of costs happening there. H also is geographically above the size of A, B, and C, and about that full extent going from the junction all the way to Summit Lake. So there's a different set of questions there. Additionally, H also has Silverton, New Denver, Slocan, right in the mix, and those areas have expressed interest in participating in these services, not bringing them in at this point. Whereas ABC has Creston, and that's it. There's just a different relationship there. Additionally, I might add that the Creston Valley Services Committee is just a logical forum to have these discussions. Whereas with H, we'll be coming to RAC directly because there is, well, perhaps there'd be a service committee meeting there as well to have those discussions if New Denver, Spokane, and Silverton will register.
I was looking in terms of the efficiencies, but I think you pretty much colored that up pretty good. I can see that, that would work well. Second question, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
Can we just, sorry, just check sound, because Director Pop-Up left and came back, and I'm wondering if you just want to make sure he can hear us.
Oh, I didn't see that you left. Yeah, Walter, Director Popoff, do you have sound now? Or can you unmute now? I would recommend maybe if you go to the page and phone in, or Christine could email you the phone in number just if it's faster. You could join by phone for audio. Then if you need to speak, I didn't want to pause the meeting for 10 or 20 minutes while you solve an issue if you can phone in. So we'll wait for you to do that.
You have Maine on the list and myself.
Okay, great. And we will have to acknowledge Director Main. So, motion to provide freedom of the floor to Director Main. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? So, Director Main, you will be on the list after Weatherhead. Welcome, Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. So.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Vandenberg. We did a little interruption. I didn't hear a point of order, point of privilege, or anything from Chair Watson, but we did interrupt your flow. Go ahead. Back to
Great, thank you to the chair. And so the second question is around just not understanding. We've got the table 2 in both examples refer to the rates, that is the cost per thousand. What is the difference between actual rate and residential rate? There is a difference in those numbers.
There we go.
And which ones would really apply to the budget?
Need to go back to budget 101. Tom or Stuart, who wants this one or the other? Tom?
Respectfully to the chair, so when an assessment happens, we receive 2 sets of assessments. So what we'll receive is an actual assessment, which is sort of the whole value of your electoral area. So electoral area C will have a stated actual assessment value. Those are based on hospital assessments, right? Because we also will. We'll also receive a set of numbers called residential assessments. And what that's doing is that's actually looking at this from a residential perspective, just like it says. So when I present sets of numbers to you, I present you an actual number, which if you take that actual number and multiply it by the actual assessed value, what you're going to get is the total assessment you're getting. So you're taking into account industrial, commercial, residential, utilities, all these different pieces, because they're all taxed at different rates. So consider this sort of an amalgamation of those, right? Like almost like an average of all those different rates. When we talk about residential, this is specific to residential properties. So what I'm modeling for you there is I'm modeling for you the impact on residents. Okay, so residential properties is the only, because that's your primary consideration as an elected official, generally, right? You're interested in knowing what ratepayers, residences, and what the impact is going to be on them. Okay, so when again, what we'll do is we'll give you that number in order to have that conversation in the community. But when we actually do the calculations for their budgets, we're going to use actual because that's going to tax utilities, industry, commercial, and residential. Does that answer your question?
Completely. Unfortunately, however, the residential rate is never available to us beyond this report for us to have these conversations with our constituents on other things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, respectfully through the chair, I can always provide a residential for you. We use them all the time, actually, because that's one of our primary considerations. So you may have questions around residential assessments. By all means, just reach out. Happy to provide it.
last year, bit of a digression here, there was a lot of concern about industrial rates in Crescent Valley and the shifts and changes. I mean, look at Area A, window box is pretty significant. The lost to Masco's underground mine, there's nothing going on worth any money at Bluebell mine. The lost to Masco's processing facility, but we still have fairly high industrial. Area B's got a bit of gas line that's taxable. They got Hushcroft Mill, that's about it. Area C has a little bit of that gas line and almost nothing of the mill. And I think the railway bridge is taxed, and it was in Area C by a gerrymandering exercise back in 1965. My view on it, my personal historical view on it. If residents all wanted to know, we could ask Yev to speak to that at the outset of our budget presentation in 2026, because there was a lot of concern about industrial versus residential rates last year. That's a separate conversation I think that we could have. But we don't have a lot of industrial base, and there's a little obvious difference in the assessment of Windwood Mill versus the others. So we will move to Weatherhead. And, oh, sorry, Tom, did I mischaracterize that too badly?
No, one thing I wanted to add, especially to the chair, is that the residential rate is generally lower, right? Because we generally tax industry at a higher level,
Four
right?
times.
We move as much of the taxation value over the industry as we can to spare residences. Ag is charged even lower, so if you have a lot of agricultural, what you're gonna see is a reduction there as well. So farms, obviously, West Preston, you're gonna see something out there.
So this is why we didn't predict how long this meeting
Yeah,
goes.
exactly.
CAO.
Yeah, so just two other items for the benefit of the community. The reason the residential rate is helpful is that if someone came in from, they own a business, for example, you can look at our budget sheets, and based on the factor on their tax assessment, they're able to actually calculate what their taxes will be on our budget. If we use the actual rate, they can't do that necessarily. They would need more information, but we use the residential rate on our budget. So the rate per thousand that you see on our budget sheets, that's the residential rate because it's applicable to everybody. And the second thing I'll say is that we don't have, as regional districts, the flexibility to change that factor. Municipalities do. And that's one of the big things around taxation for regional district is that the province sets our conversion rates. Whereas if you have a community that's got a big industrial property, they actually negotiate with those business owners and to talk about what they'll pay for taxation in a given year and what that factor looks like and how much of the residential taxation they might take in a given year. So they can actually shift that. We can't do that.
Selgar Zaitsev would be the best historical example in the last 20 years of arm wrestling over industrial rate. Yeah, so the residential rate times 2.4 for commercial or times 4.0 for industrial. And that's where you see the big difference with some of the bigger mills. Good conversation as background, I guess. Director Weatherhead.
Thank you, very good conversation. And I'm taking you away from this again, I apologize for that. Just to clarify future thinking, because there was a dog bylaw in place for some of our areas, I guess Tom will know the answer to this. At some point, if we can shift over to this particular bylaw and amalgamate ourselves into this bylaw, does that dissolve our old bylaw? Or because it wouldn't be considered an amendment, and that one confuses me. And then also in that, just a two-part to this would be then, would it kind of look like we would join area H in some kind of a proportion just being in proximity and maybe sharing, contract. So just a two-part question, if I any insight into that, would you have that, Tom?
Respectfully through the chair, if Area K was interested in joining in it, we would probably have a little planning session because there are options, right? You could roll up those dog control services and make blanket all of Area K with the aggressive and dangerous dog bylaw, right? And bring in that regulation and that sort of thing. Roll up all of our other dog services. There's the process for that in the local government act. You can do it. We would have to decide what to do with any assets, what to do about contracts. There are moving pieces there, but it's totally possible. Or Area K may decide to go to a defined area, say in these defined areas, these people are really happy with their dog control service. We're not going to change it. But in those areas, they want just this aggressive dog bylaw, so we can do that as well. From an operational standpoint, obviously much more straightforward to just blank the area with aggressive dangerous dogs and roll out those other services. Takes a little more time, but it's totally doable.
Okay, thank you. Just to supplement that then, would, because, NICASP is attached to this particular bylaw service, whereas a municipality may need to stick with what they got and the rural may not, would there be then their ability to separate or have their own, or would they want to maybe consider adopting within their own municipality their own dog bylaw?
You know, respectfully through the chair, these are all considerations that as we, you know, if the are on the subject of sort of unwinding those other those existing services, these are all conversations that would have to happen. I don't want to use the term service review because that is a very specific connotation. But you know, we would get into some of those questions around like, okay, you know, we don't want to take the service entirely away from NICASP. We want to ensure that they have opportunities. But one of the things we sort of realized in the dog control world too is the needs of a municipality are fundamentally different than the needs of a rural area, right? Operationally, it's different how you provide these services and what the service level expectations are. So, you know, we can create opportunities to leverage economies of scale so that everybody enjoys lower costs and stuff, but they may have to adopt their own regulation and their own service levels. So there are opportunities there. And we do have an eye in the future on this.
Right, okay, thank you.
Director Main.
Yeah, I was on the list too.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. And this is the question to Tom. Some voices are not coming through really clearly. So going back to talking about why Area H has a separate bylaw, and in the response, Tom, I heard something about the municipalities, but I couldn't hear what you said about the municipalities. So my question is this intended to include Silverton, Slocan, and New Denver or not?
Yes, go ahead.
Respectfully through the chair, at this time it does not include municipalities. And that was the intention of this, was to basically get these services established in electoral area H. In the future, there's room to modify that, to amend bylaws, to bring that in. But with municipalities, we have to have these discussions around the regulations and how they're going to be applied in municipal areas. So, you know, there is a question of the municipality. Is the municipality willing to adopt the regional district regulation? In the past with fire, those have been hard questions for municipalities to answer, right? So we're going to get the service established in H, if H is amenable to what staff have developed. And then moving forward after that, there's room for discussions around bringing municipal partners into the service and what that might look like. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
The reason I appreciate this being a bit of an open conversation, you got to realize when there's an animal incident, sometimes Buddy just moves the dog next door.
Mm-hmm.
So Buddy could move the dog from area H into one of the villages, and then we've got nothing except can or will the RCMP do something. Or Buddy might move the dog, and I say Buddy, whoever might move the dog from one end of Summit Lake to the other, and all of a sudden it's an area K. They find one of their friends who says, "Oh, take my dog for a little while. There's little intel on this animal." We had an incident. So this is where it becomes complicated, because I know just around Creston Valley, we had dogs moved around before any reasonable action could be taken within the framework we had. I do have Watson and Weatherhead for the second time, Vandenberg for the second time. Go ahead, please, Chair Watson.
Procedurally, I do just want to check on sound, because we've heard a few times, and Director Popoff joined the meeting on another computer, so maybe we just want to check in.
I think Director Popoff also phoned in. His phone number's gone now. Director Popoff, are you on the phone or are you on just computer?
Oh, there he is.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. I have hung up my phone. I'm on my other computer. So
Okay.
Hopefully you can hear me. I can hear you all great.
Okay, no, you're coming in well on this end as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So my question, and in the spirit of repeating conversations when we go over things several times because we forget, I do apologize. You made a comment at the very beginning of your kind of opening on it that our CMP cannot enforce carrying or dealing with dangerous dogs unless we have a dog control bylaw. Something along those lines, you can correct me. You do really well at that, respectfully. My question is, of course, we had situations in Area D, Johnson's Landing. We did do an assessment on putting in a dog bylaw, and it was so expensive based on assessment and population that it really wasn't financially feasible. We did work with the RCMP, who worked with the SPCA. There is a section in the community charter where they can do that, but it takes extra measures and SPCA being involved and a lot of factors that were unique to that situation. My question through to you is it really that the community charter provisions that give our CMP that ability are insufficient to the actual function of it, and that's why we need to do this? Why don't they just enforce dangerous dogs? Because they're dangerous.
I do see Sangeeta's hand up, or it was up. Or do you want to defer it to Tom? Which way are we going here?
If I may, Chair, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. It was clapping. I didn't mean to. Clap. Yeah, I just wanted to say, in regards to the question that Director Watson raised, the the dangerous dog regulation exists in the LGA under Section 49. So the RCMP can respond, and I did talk to the Creston RCMP a couple of weeks ago, and they have responded to aggressive dog incidents. Where they're limited in their area is they don't have any trained officers that can apprehend the dog. They don't have a facility to bring the dog to. And Eric did some sleuthing for me and found out that in Creston, town of Creston uses PAWS. We need to still contact PAWS to find out if that's a possibility, if they can house the dog there. As long as, so under Section 49, RCMP can respond. The bylaw helps to track those aggressive dogs. As it's being proposed, the bylaw will track those aggressive dogs and then go through that process of deeming it dangerous, which is what the RCMP is seeking our support on doing, in addition to apprehending the dog and housing the dog.
Supplemental
Yes,
to that.
go ahead.
So my understanding on the gap at the time, in terms of not having a bylaw in place, was the actual cost on impoundment, any legal fees, handling of the animal. We don't actually have an impoundment. So you mentioned a few things that need that extra support that the bylaw brings. Am I correct in assuming when we get to the regulatory component, it will include those other provisions in terms of the actual ability to take an animal, do what we need to do with it in terms of it's dangerous, or is that still resting with the RCMP?
Well, through the chair, if I may, sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, because it's in this bylaw in the report.
It depends on how we establish the service through a contractor, what happens if we can find a contractor. But the intention would be for that contractor to respond and be there with the RCMP. In some situations, we've experienced where there's maybe criminal activity as well. And so it would be helpful to have RCMP support for the dog control officer. And then we can go through the process. Bylaw staff will be involved at that point where they will go through the legal process. So getting the process started on deeming the dog dangerous, and that involves talking to a vet and getting them in the area to basically deem the dog dangerous before we are able to euthanize. And there might be other insinuating circumstances. We've experienced a few already in the last few years that might, come up. We don't know. It changes.
So
Good. Go ahead.
clarifying, I think it's fine, but the question is that the actual facility in which you need to bring an animal to, that is either going to be held by the contractor or by us, but the bylaw will cover that we have the authority to do that. That was the big gap, the funding and the ability to take them somewhere so that they didn't just get moved somewhere else, which is what happens. So that's kind of the clarification. I get the legal.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so and I will talk about the costs estimated with that when I get around to myself, but I'm still moving down the list further. I have Director Popoff for the first time on this topic. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Sheriff. I think Sangeeta covered most of what I was going to say, but I have been dealing on this issue for the last 7 or 8 years. And I've met with the sergeant at the Nelson detachment, and he was the corporal in the Nakusp detachment. And what they told me is they will respond to a call on a dangerous dog issue. They will go visit the owner, talk to the owner, but they don't have the facilities to seize the dog, as explained in the community charter section 49. They don't have the facilities, and they want us to have a bylaw that has the facilities to be able to go out there with the RCMP and seize the dog and take the dog to the facility. So, and I think Sangeeta explained it quite well. Thank you.
Okay, looking at the speakers list, unless I missed somebody for the first time, I'll go for the first time, then I have Vandenberg for the second time. And perhaps Weatherhead, I wasn't sure. No. Okay, so, yeah, this bylaw has what we need. Thank you. I believe all the elements are in there that I've heard for years, as you said, whether it's Creston Valley Detachment Commander or other RCMP input. This is what we need to be effective. In the estimates for the bylaw, there's some verbiage in there about, say estimated 3 to 4 dogs per year for housing they're dealing with. I think we'll find that we have 3 or 4 bites per year from one dog. And I could tell you where some of those dogs live in Area A. And so I'm good. We haven't moved any of the readings. I will be good when we go to first and second reading, and we'll support both of these independent bylaws. But the costs, right now, we had a conversation with Director Davidoff about, well, this can happen in the other dog control bylaws, but they're not being front-ended the same way this one is on costs. So I don't think we've thought through the cost-effective approach for this, because this one would require the 3 electoral areas ABC to put up $144,000 in the first 3 years to somehow create a pound, when we know a pound exists, whether it's PAWS or some other pound. The only issue with PAWS would be, I don't believe they support euthanasia under any circumstance. So they may not accept an animal, knowing that one of the outcomes might be that that animal's destroyed. So that's the complication that needs to be examined before we start trying to cost in a pound. It would make no sense to pay anybody $144,000 to establish a pound, because then we are stuck with them for the contractor, whatever rate they say, for whatever time are we going to pay someone else $144,000 for the next pound. On top of that, we have an estimated legal fee on to be set of $60,000. Sorry, the pound and the legal fees together, that's the front end of $144,000. On top of that, the actual projected contract cost over the first 3 years is $222,000. When we project a cost in a rural area of some $70,000 a year, and we're at risk of getting one bid, we're asking for a high bid for what may be one animal a year, but we will be fixed if it's a fixed price. So how these estimates are backed up with contract language, is there some much smaller allowance for being on call? There would be no reason to send somebody out the moment of a bite or an alert. Usually whoever's bit, that's some medical thing. You don't want any bylaw or anybody to apprehend it. The RCMP may or may not attend. What we need is to be able to go with the RCMP later, apprehend the animal, unless buddies move the animal, which is exactly the pattern which has happened in the past. Apprehend the animal the next day. This isn't a midnight on Saturday at the bush party call out thing. This is a follow-up as bylaw does, normally later on with the RCMP to make sure there's no other issues and the animal is taken away and goes through due process. So the front end cost $366,000 for 3 electoral areas in the first 3 years, which then we may rotate to a different contractor. I challenge those numbers. They need a little more meat behind them before we get the third reading and adoption of these bylaws. They got to be realistic numbers. Our communities want this very much, and it is the occasional animal in the occasional area, and we should go out with a prudent number. If we found we severely underestimated something as A, B, and C, if we had to do a short-term borrowing to bridge some cost and not go into deficit, I would support that approach. I would not support the approach of signaling to whoever may take on this work that there's a huge pot of money. There's $250,000 for the first 3 years, because I think that's the wrong message to put out for what is probably a very occasional response to a very limited but very severe problem. So I'm hoping by the time we get to the third reading, we'll have a lot more conversation about cost. And then that modeling will probably help all of our colleagues decide whether or not they want to go to this step and actually do something decisive about these animals. So I'm not looking for a response today. I'm not looking for any other budget numbers today, but I'm deeply concerned about what I see as projected costs, because individuals looking at this public report will set in their mind what they think that opportunity for them could be, and whether or not it's competitive, I'm not sure. Tom, sure, on my rant, please go ahead. Then I have for the second time Vandenberg and Weatherhead.
Respectfully, due to the chair, my role as a research analyst is to come up with worst case scenarios.
Yes.
That's what I do. I look for the worst case scenario. My budgets are conservative budgets. As we go through the budgeting process, as we go through procurement, there are procurement professionals in this organization who, will be utilized to drive the cost as low as they possibly can, to find the appropriate contractors, to make sure we're getting really good value. The procurement process is designed for that. I am not involved in the procurement process. I am involved in looking at worst case scenarios, the scary stories, right? So if in fact we do have to, so from my perspective, when I was looking at, say, kenneling fees, the way I look at kenneling fees is if we're going to contract somebody to do this service, we are effectively booking a bad dog space in a kennel for a year, right? Because you can't just take a bad dog like this and put it into a normal kennel. It needs special facilities. It needs special services. There's special care that has to happen. And again, it's not like you're going to a kennel where I kennel my dog when I go away. That individual needs a bite suit. These are hard things. So what I did was I looked at, if you're going to book a kennel space for a year, it's $75 a day, and that's how we come to numbers. There are many ways to look at this, and in the procurement, that's the worst case scenario, the worst way to look at it. In the procurement process, we actually then go into actually we don't need to pay for this for a year. It's the worst case scenario. We talk to people, we look at the market, we engage with different kennels and stuff, and try and apply pressure to get those costs down. Similarly, when we look at legal fees, right? Ideally, there are no legal fees, but I look at, what happened in the cusp with Bolt. It was very, very expensive, right? And so it's my job to say, what happens if this happens every single year? And again, through the procurement and budgeting process, this is a budget, but it's not the budget. So you have the ability as elected officials to make decisions about these numbers moving forward in the future. This is the worst case scenario. I don't recommend, this is the high water mark, and from there through the budgeting and procurement process, you can further refine these numbers.
I thank you for that. You told me that before, Tom, and I do appreciate that. And I expect this will maybe become a Crescent Valley Services committee conversation for a while we look at procurement options that are more local. I don't know what Area H is going to do. Second time Director Vandenberg, then Weatherhead. Please go ahead, Director. Oh, okay. Vandenberg.
Great, thank you through the chair. So this is a process that's somewhat new for me. Eventually this will roll into a service of sorts, I believe.
Yes.
So I'd like to understand how that happens. So is this then, if past the third reading, then we create a service, a new number, and it's as simple as that? And then in our budget, we have, how does the service aspect work now?
If
we are successfully going forward.
Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Respectfully through the chair, the budget that's presented in the report, that high water budget, like the worst case scenario budget, then drives what I'm recommending as a worst case scenario requisition number. Okay, so I said a high, that's your maximum annual allowable requisition. When the service starts, my preference is to see a number much lower than the maximum annual requisition. Right, your requisition number it should be much less than that. We shouldn't hit the maximum annual allowable requisition, in my mind, for 5 to 7 years at a minimum. That's what we're really shooting. Okay, so, using this as the high mark, going to procurement and then looking at the low mark, we should be able to set a budget number somewhere in that process. But really, like, you will not be able to design a service budget, an actual service budget, until you talk with procurement, right? Or until procurement goes out and looks at the market and says, look, realistically, this is what's out there. These numbers are actually based on existing dog control services. So what I've done is I've taken existing dog control services and then done an average of those contract costs and then weighted that average by population, because population is the driver for the number of dogs, right? So if you look at, and so I look at this on a per person basis, because that's how we measure the number of dogs in the community. On a per person basis, the number that we're looking at here is somewhere in the order, I think we're about $3 or $4 per person, I believe. In area I, you're looking at $126 per person.
So and maybe I didn't, if I may.
But I should check the requisition period, 139,000 for the first year.
Yeah.
There's only 14,000 total people, including town. So without town, we're 9,000 of us. So is a lot more than a couple dollars. It's $15 per person. Anyway, sorry.
My question is more procedural, but I do think Tom went through that again. My question is quite simple. How does the service part work? How do you create that? Is you pass the bylaw third reading and then you go to your list of services and the next number is such, and then how does that then become real? Does it then get tagged onto the bylaw?
So Stuart go on this.
Yeah, so through the chair, so this is actually first and second reading today on this. The regulatory bylaw is at second reading as well. So in December, you'd see a report that would take both of them to third reading.
Yeah.
Looking to Tom to shake me off of them. And at that point, you would determine how you're going to attempt to establish the service. So you could do that by referendum, which would take some time. You could do that by AAP, which takes less time. I don't think petition is an option here. So it's just those two. And at that point, so there would be a formal resolution that would indicate the number of, if you went to AAP, the way AAP works is that if we get more than 10% of the population dissenting to the establishment of the service, so people saying no, then the AAP fails. For a referendum, you're asking for a positive result. So you're looking for people to say yes, and you need 50 plus 1 of the voting, of the voters, not the population, the voting population, but the voters to establish the service. So you have those options in front of you for December to make that choice as to how you want to proceed to establish the service. And then once that's done, it would go to the inspector for approval. There's a quote unquote quashing period where someone can dispute the process or the results of our public process. And then it would come back to the board for adoption. And at that point, the service is established.
Thank you. That's what I was after, because I have not walked through one of these yet.
A little bit of a road ahead of us.
There's a period of time, you just outlined that there's still. Be lucky to get it done halfway through 2026.
Public perception of value will also matter then. I will be curious to know if we can flag it on our budget or not. Likely not for 2026.
Got it.
So I have
Kind of where I wanted to go with that.
continuing it for a second time, but hopefully this is educating everybody because we all have dog issues. I have now again, Director Weatherhead, yes, for a second time, then David off. Please go ahead, Director Weatherhead.
Smart. Thank you through the chair. So when I'm looking just again at this type of service for a dangerous dog, this is very different than the type of service that we have had in area K and J and whatever have had, where there are many other components to that contractor's work, not just the dangerous dog component. So is it fair to say that the actual cost of, say, a contractor would then look less for taxpayers in terms of it would be more on an as-needed basis, but it wouldn't be that round-the-clock weekly commitment of dog control that was dealing with all of the other little things that dog control dealt with. Like, it doesn't seem like we're not, it seems like a portion of what that contractor did is what this is going to represent, and not the whole thing. So when we're talking about comparisons to the existing contractors, it just kind of, a little red flag went up that, well, wait a minute, we're not comparing apples to apples though. Am I correct on that, Tom? Okay.
Respectfully through the chair, yes, you are. This is a different thing.
Yeah.
On an electoral area, right? On an electoral area basis, when you cover a whole electoral area, the contract cost is higher. But on a per person basis, it's much, much cheaper.
Director Davidoff, please go ahead.
Yes, Chair, just a point of information, the dog control in Brilliant, BC covers a community of approximately a total population of 100 people with maybe 30 or so properties, and they foot the whole bill. And basically that's out of I've got 2,570 constituents, but only 100 constituents and 30 properties pay for the full cost of dog control in Brilliant. Just to inform the board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So exhausted the speakers list. I hope everybody has something to think about moving forward other than the two bylaws in front of us. Does anybody want to move those two bylaws? They can be a block from committee. Both moved. Chair Watson?
I can, unless someone from the areas wants to do it.
Go ahead, move both. Do we have seconded? So now we actually have these pretty well written up bylaws on the floor. Any further discussion for first and second reading? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Those will go to board tomorrow, and hopefully will we see this back in December with them kind of both together so we can move our next step? That's only a few weeks away.
Respectfully through the chair, that's the discretion of the board.
Oh, yeah.
We're priority.
I think if I could.
Go ahead.
So through the chair, I think the determining factor now would just be confirming the dollar amount that's in the bylaw is per Tom's report. If there is a concern around that actual rate that he's put in there, that might be the thing that I see as possibly contention where you'd want to lower that. But subject to that, and again, Tom can correct me, this is just a matter of putting together that formal resolution around whether you go to AAP or referendum, putting those options in front of you, and Director Popoff with his own service could make a recommendation to the board, and then the area A, B, and C directors could determine how they want to approach the public. So I think those are the two next steps.
So without tying up the entire committee or board tomorrow, I would appreciate if we could have the budgetary aspect of this put on the December Crescent Valley Services, which still gives us a little window before the December board, to talk about what if we say to the public, this is the highest, but here's where we're going to start, and we get in trouble. What mechanisms do we have? If in fact we have a couple of legal challenges right out of the gate, where we find through procurement that we don't have the competitiveness that we hoped for. So I'd like to have that conversation with Crescent Valley Services if we could. And then any other directors, of course, would be welcome to see the outcome of that conversation. And that's even shorter period of time until that. It's only a couple of weeks. But then that's the path I'd like to follow. So could we refer this discussion to Crescent Valley Services with the agreement of Chair DeBoon for that, Watson?
Just to note that you might want to make sure Director Popoff, if he wants to be included in that.
Yeah, if we refer A, B, and C to Crescent Valley Services, I would encourage Director Popoff then to maybe, if he's able to join in remotely to that meeting, would certainly give him freedom of the floor. He could ask all of his questions about procurement and the public process, assent process then. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll look
unless they have a shared services meeting coming up. I'm not sure that they're there yet.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll look for that as an opportunity. Hopefully that'll work out. I don't know what the date is. December, is it the 2nd or something? I don't have a calendar in front of me. It's the third. It's not very far away. Okay.
So to the chair, are you asking for direction then to move that planning bylaw ABC to Valley Services?
I'm gonna ask Chair DeBoon, because it's his committee, if there's any issues with that, and then we can.
But sorry, procedurally,
Yeah.
I think you're going ahead with the reading today, but then
Yeah,
the next
we just-
conversation on budget is what is that CDSD?
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
So I'll ask Chair DeBoon to have a budgetary conversation around this bylaw at Crescent Valley Services. Yes, Director Popoff? Your hand is up there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just, what you mentioned to having it on, Creston Valley Services Committee agenda for discussion. In Area H, this only involves Area H, not the three municipalities, and I don't know if we should have a discussion on that, at our Slocan Valley Services Committee meeting. Like Director Main mentioned that why were the villages not included? So this was a start for Area H and the opportunity for the villages. They have, most of the villages have their own dog control bylaws. And they would have to be included in this bylaw if they so choose. So it might be worthwhile having a discussion at Slocan Valley Services Committee meeting. And I'd like Director Main to respond to that if she feels it would be important to have it on the committee meeting agenda.
So you can do that separately, and then check with Tom what information you'd be able to do.
Yeah, and if I could.
Yes, Stuart?
And through the chair, I want to make sure that we focus on what this process is intended to do, which is establish a service in A, B, and C, and establish a service in Area H. I know there's been a lot of discussion around what happens next for areas that have dog control, or what could be done after the fact with the municipalities, but that's really not what we're trying to do here. And I don't think that getting into a discussion with what could happen a year from now with respect to other participants is what we're trying to do here, because I think that clouds the issue. We don't want to confuse the public thinking that Silverton, New Denver, and Spokane are going to be part of a dog control service, which they're not. This isn't about them voting on anything. This is about Area H residents. And again, same thing in A, B, and C. We don't want the assumption that the town of Creston is involved in this, or that Area K is somehow changing their service level right now, because that's not what this is about. This is a very, very direct process on establishing the service in 4 rural areas.
Supplemental, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
And to the chair to CAO Stewart. So from what I understand, Stewart, it's not really necessary to put it on the Slocan Valley Services agenda for discussion at this point.
Through the chair, I would agree. I think that it might benefit you to be able to attend the CVSC discussion, because it might impact the level of taxation you feel comfortable going to your residents with. So it might be good to have a discussion to say, do the 4 participating directors, do you want to be on the same page when it comes to this? Or are you going with very different rates to the public? So that would be the benefit I would see, is just having your ear at that meeting could help you determine what dollar amount you'd like in your bylaw for the board to consider.
And if I may, Chair, to respond
Yes.
to
Go
CAO
ahead.
Stewart is, I'm comfortable with the amount that's there. And the discussion at the board, will probably go through the amount in the other areas. But I'm comfortable with the amount there to start with. And my intent is not alternate approval process. It's going to be a referendum. So only the people in Area H will be voting on it. So I don't see it necessary being on the Slocan Valley Services Committee for discussion at this time.
Okay, thanks, Director. So I've separately sent Chair DeBoon, Crescent Valley Services, an email asking for it to be on the agenda. Copied Tom, copied Walter. So we are done with this one. Second readings are done. Thanks for everybody's participation, because this is not a little issue. And hopefully in 5 years or so, we'll have this kind of response opportunity or availability everywhere. We have no environmental services items. We have no rural admin items. So at 9:54 local time, we are at public time. I did see Valley Voice and LC are public, I believe. If anybody has a question of this committee, If you wanted to unmute now and ask your question, please do so. Sarah. I will note the Valley Voice. I don't know if this is the last time we'll have you at one of our committee meetings. I think the end date is coming up for that. I will take a moment to note that East Shore Main Street may be the last published paper in the area come the very near future. And they're even having a conversation with people who submit to it. I do regularly about their future. But they gave a nod, the Main Street editor gave a nod to the Valley Voice and the Pennywise for the service they provided and the way they presented information so that anybody can read anything of local interest. So I just wanted to pass that along, Rachel, that other editors who are struggling with this, hard paper publication question, such as the Main Street, really appreciated seeing what the other papers have done over the decades. Nobody's unmuted, so I take it there are no questions. We do have an in-camera meeting. So entertain a motion to close the meeting to the public. Watson seconded. Weatherhead, all in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Motion to recess the open meeting. Watson, Weatherhead, all in favor? Okay, thank you. So we are enclosed. We'll let Christine get everybody who doesn't need to be in